If you want to actually know what's happening in abortion clinics around the country, if you heard about the babies, 5 of them found at a DC abortion clinic, full-term children, some of them dead through partial birth abortion. If you want to really know what's going on, if you cannot turn away because you think this sounds crazy, and it is, but it's happening, join us for today's show. You do not want to miss it.
Welcome into the program, everybody. This is Alabama Unfiltered, your favorite podcast. I am one of your hosts, Scott Beeson. Amy Beth Shaver is with me. Allison Sinclair is with me as well. Ladies, how are y'all?
We're great.
Good. I'm
good.
very excited about today. Which one of you wants to introduce our guest who is already ready in the wings?
Allison, that's more professional.
I'm super excited. Today we have AJ Hurley, who I don't know. Do you know him from the healthcare worker that got kicked out of UCLA Medical Center for not getting vaccinated? My personal hero.
Absolutely.
Do you know him from the story of saving and finding the 5 full-term babies that were found behind the Surgi Medical Center in Washington, D.C., and I think 110 first trimester babies as well. You probably know his hands holding those babies more than him, or also just accosting Elizabeth Warren for really good reason last week when we had you on the podcast. I think we connected with you right after that.
Wait. That was AJ?
Yes.
This guy?
Yes.
But he looks so
nicely suggesting things to Pocahontas?
No, he's so nice. He does it. He shares the gospel in such a great way. And I think you have an amazing story, but I don't even know where you came from. Like if you Google you,
Where did you come from?
if you Google
The
your
aliens,
name,
of
you get
course.
all kinds of like really great activists, like amazing things. But where did you grow up? What's your story? Like, how did you get here? And then we need to hear about your week because I hear it was crazy.
Okay. Yeah. So I grew up in a little town called Upland, California, about an hour east of Los Angeles. I grew up there. I was homeschooled for my whole life until college. And, I became a EMT out of high school, started working on an ambulance. Then I went back to a little Christian college called the Masters University, John MacArthur School, graduated from there, studied like liberal studies in biology, music, emphasis, and minor kind of in music. And I then went to respiratory therapy school and worked for 7 years at UCLA until they kicked me out of there for not giving them my papers. So I've always been pro-life, and especially when I started doing work with these little babies so respiratory therapists, a lot of people don't know, like we manage that life support breathing machine. And so I started doing that, just putting these little babies on ventilators. And I worked in this pediatric CT, congenital heart anomaly kids that would come out of the NICU. And some of these kids, like 21 weeks on, were putting these babies on ventilators and saving them. And then, literally across the other wing, they're taking 24-week-old babies and dismembering them. And just the discrepancy between those was just unbelievable to me, really. And so I was like, man, we got to get more involved. So we started doing pro-life stuff, and here I am. God's providence, just, oh man, next thing you know it, I'm, yelling at Senator Warren.
I know. Well, let's go
done,
back
by
in
the
time.
way.
Yeah, it was good. Let's go back in time a little bit because I'm always fascinated. You're talking about working at the hospital there at UCLA, and y'all are saving little babies at an earlier age than where they're doing away with their lives across the hospital. I always want to know, are there ever conversations with the people on the other side where you just calmly like, hey, yeah, we saved, we had 5, 24-week-old babies this week. And Is there ever a connection made? Because I've never really spoken to someone who actually does abortions, carries out that horrendous act. I just wonder if the light ever goes off. Did y'all ever have any of those kinds of conversations?
Well, it's a completely separate wing of the hospital where that stuff goes on. So no, like, that's in the OBGYN like division of a particular aspect of the hospital. I actually don't even know who does that at UCLA. So in the UC system, they have something called a Ryan residency. And the Ryan residency is this program that specializes in training abortion. And so particularly up in San Francisco is the abortion training, late-term abortion training hub of the entire world. They train everyone there pretty much that is getting trained in late-term labor induction abortion. That type of procedure is getting trained at UCSF under a woman named Eleanor Dry. So we've been really trying to expose what's going on there, and they've really come after me recently to in reference to that, but that's an whole nother story. So I don't know if you want to eventually go there, but
I do want to touch on it because, again, in researching you, there's just little blips out there. But with this program of training of late-term abortion doctors, there's some sort of contract or something that happened. You're going to have to fill in the blanks where someone contractually was obligated to provide 2 full term. We just lost him.
He might can still hear us.
He might can still hear us.
Right.
So,
but like, I want to ask if we get back, and maybe y'all know the story. Even the being fired for not taking the vaccines is a huge part of his story that hopefully we'll be able to hear. And I found it fascinating. One of the articles I looked up was he had been taking care of people because being a respiratory specialist. There's AJ. You back?
He's back.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
That's okay.
Oh, we might lose him again. There he is.
There we go.
Sorry about that. I forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. So.
And I bet you're getting disturbed a lot these days.
Yes.
But what I was asking, we just talked about you while you were away. We'll get back to that. But isn't there some sort of contract with the hospital to provide 2 fetuses a month, 2 babies a month, full term, to be able to experiment on? What was that story?
Yeah. So that's only one contract. So how it works is the NIH, you might have heard of this division of the NIH called the NIAID office, which is Fauci's division of it. So this year alone will provide, I believe the number is $87 million of our taxpayer funded money to fetal organ research specifically. So how it works is institutions, research facilities like UCLA, UCSF, they will apply for federal funding for their grants for these research projects. So that 2 elective fetuses per month, that was only one research contract. They have, I don't even know how many. Every year it changes, but and that's why we know what they're doing and how they're doing it, is because we just look at these research contracts that are released through FOIA requests. And in those research contracts, we just read it and it spells exactly out how many babies they're supplying for each research contract, the gestational ages of those children, and the organs that they're targeting that they need for these research projects. So the one you're specifically referring to was 2 elective terminations of 18 to 24 week gestational age children and targeting the livers and thymuses of those children. And they were grafting them on lab mice, believe it or not, because they found if they can basically take the thymus glands of these 18 to 24 week old gestational children, they can graft them onto lab mice and give these mice a humanized immune system. So when they test their pharmaceutical drugs or they test their vaccine, vaccine stuff, they can determine exactly how whatever modality or whatever medication that they're doing is going to affect the human system, human immune system by just basically experimenting on these mice instead that have been humanized. So every time you hear humanized mice, and that term has been all over the place. If you're paying attention, that's what we're talking about, is mice that have been humanized by fetal livers and thymuses.
How long have we done this Frankenstein type research on these precious babies?
Before Roe, actually. So we used to get the organs before over in Europe, because before Roe, it was obviously illegal to do this. So in the 50s and 60s, we were involved with fetal organ trafficking and fetal organ harvesting. So far as the University of Pittsburgh was involved in this back in the day also. So if you go to, I don't know if you've heard of the name David Daleiden. He's a personal friend of mine, but he exposed this back in 2015 when he went undercover with all the fetal trafficking stuff and got these Planned Parenthood executives to all admit undercover and then under oath exactly what they're doing in labor, through labor induction, inducing women into labor, withholding the euthanized drug that would normally kill these babies, because that drug digoxin that kills them in a normal labor induction abortion, that drug destroys and nukes all the stem cells of the organs that they need. So they purposely withhold that. And then these babies, by their own research, if you withhold digoxin, these babies are coming out alive up to 50% of the time, and either are left to expire, or who knows, I dare suggest that some of these, depending on the organ, have to be acquired within minutes, or else, the tissue dies. So.
I mean,
there are some things that I just wish I didn't know.
So
you thought this was going to be a happy program today.
Well,
right.
No, Amy Beth is actually adopted, and I have two internationally. I'm about to cry. Two internationally adopted children. So this is it's tough.
So it's
don't make fun of us girls.
So it's happening from the 50s
tomorrow.
and 60s, and so there's the how, but how also has it gotten? How have we gotten away with this for so long? I mean, thank God for David, for you, for exposing what's happening. But right here in the United States, only a mere few years ago, when I found out that there were these situations happening, you talk to people who are like, oh, babies aren't born alive. They don't do these kind of horrific things to these children. You're just a conspiracy theorist. That's crazy. Meanwhile, you look up and you find out that they were powering California, using babies as fuel to heat buildings and
Wait.
This is in Maryland.
Maryland. Yeah.
In Maryland.
Wait.
Okay. Yeah. We got to stop.
Yeah.
Time out.
No, yeah. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what she's referring to is, so when we uncovered this box of 115 babies coming out of the abortion clinic, the company that was picking this up was a biomedical waste company called Curtis Bay. And Curtis Bay and another company called Stericycle have been involved for decades with this stuff. But if you go to projectweaklink.com, you can find more about this. But basically what they were doing was, they're a biomedical waste company that specializes in their incineration. And through the process of incineration, they're using that combustion and converting it into electrical energy for the DC and Baltimore area. So this company, Curtis Bay, was going around picking up biomedical waste, and in this case had contracts with all the abortion clinics around the DC and Baltimore area. And we're taking the fetal remains of all these children coming off of these abortion clinics and using them, literally their corpses, for the combustion to create energy, and by means of bioelectrical energy for the DC and Baltimore area. So abortion is people think it's just this political aspect. No, like, abortion and the blood of children is ingrained in every institution. It literally makes the world go round. It's involved in pharmaceuticals. It's involved in cosmetics. It's involved in biomedical waste. I mean, we could do episodes and episodes of how abortion and the blood of these children are being used and exploited for the financial the profit and gain of not only legislators, not only executives, but even the common.
Amy Beth, you were bringing up something that I would love. I don't know if AJ's back or not, but
Can you hear me?
yes,
Yeah.
you're back.
Sorry about
And
that.
AJ, it's for you too.
You're upside down or you're sideways.
The fact
Jeez.
that there has
we
to be
go.
thousands and thousands of people who have known these things are going on for decades.
Right.
And some of these stories, what y'all just brought up, and some of the things, I mean, I've heard of some of it over the last few years, but from the 50s? Do you get what I'm saying? I mean,
Right.
how is it that thousands and thousands and thousands of people could know that we've been running all these experiments, trafficking baby parts from Europe and all this kind of stuff? And we're hearing it from AJ
I mean,
in
it's
2022.
money.
I mean, think
It's
about
business. It is the total, like all I can think about is just the total depravity of man. Like this is almost unbelievable. Like to sit there and if you really think about that, Baltimore and the DC area are being supplied electricity through
that. Right. And I'm sure the
incinerated.
company said we're going to incinerate anyway. Why don't we make power off the incineration? But it's
That
just
is
the whole
sick.
idea.
That is
I
like
know.
the Roman Empire.
Right.
Just
You would think
sick.
Can
somebody
you guys
said,
hear me?
"Look, we
Yeah,
can,
we can.
we can do a lot, but let's not do that, guys. Can't we do
That's
something
right.
different?"
It's
You
nothing,
would just think,
nothing sacred. I don't even think life is
Right.
to these people anymore, obviously. And it's overwhelming. It really is. So, but AJ, how did you find, so you grow up in a Christian home, I'm assuming you're homeschooled. And so
Yeah.
you have, this faith and that probably informed your decision to value life. How
Sure.
did you get kicked out of UCLA Medical Center for standing up for your life and not taking the vaccine. Then at what point there's this group, which to me is super cool because ideologically it is the total opposite of what you probably are. It's the progressive anti-abortion uprising group that if you look, their website is super interesting, but it's really a progressive Democrat, the opposite. It's the liberal opposite of the Christian conservative side, fighting for anti-abortion, pro-life.
See, I thought you misspoke.
Yeah.
No, it's
So
totally
it's a
bizarre.
liberal, but they're pro-life.
But they're pro-life. I mean, if you pull up, okay, so like their founder, this is the team. And Teresa is an atheist, an animal rights activist, and a feminist. She founded and assisted with many organizations, but decided to start PAAU because she understands the need for protecting the unborn from members of her own party and knows better than anyone else that the Republican Party alone cannot end abortion violence. I mean, I'm all for this. Like, I just think this is great. And that's what it's going to take is the other side realizing the value of life and getting back to that. But how did you get, because I want to lead up and kind of talk about how because they're the ones that you went to the Surgi-Clinic with, correct?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah. And, and I get flack sometimes for working with progressives in this area. And I'm very careful about how I do that. I only work with progressives to end political matters. So, if you see a woman, being raped in the street, I don't care who you are. If you want to come help me stop that from happening. Right.
Correct.
I'm not going to have you come preach at my church, and I'm not going to probably have you come preach at my prayer or pray at my prayer rally. But, Francis Schaeffer talked about co-belligerence, and he used the example when your water main breaks in your street, you don't ask the denominational lines of those people who want to come help fix it. And so, in this regard, I've gotten to know and work with a lot of people who are in this super liberal state in California, mainly because the church has abandoned fighting in my area. So if I was to wait for my church, I got into this because my wife and I needed help out in West Hollywood at the abortion clinic. And I contacted the 5 pastors within a 5-mile radius of here, and all of them, one of them gave me the grace of a response and basically told them we don't have time. I mean, I bugged them.
Wow.
And they just don't care. They don't care. And so we got involved full steam ahead, working to end this political evil and shed light and expose this. And I looked to my left and looked to my right, and the other people who were already working on this were progressives. And so it's been amazing to get to know them, to evangelize them, to have conversations with them, to be friends with them. And honestly, you know, they're going to hate me for saying this, and it's kind of tongue in cheek that I do say this, but when the bullet starts flying and they find a box of 115 babies and they don't know what to do, even the feminist will look for a man to help, you know? And so that's why I was there, just because they needed an older brother kind of figure to like be there and support them during this time where they were obviously very traumatized. So, Teresa originally started in San Francisco. We've been, that's the fetal trafficking hub. That's how I got to know her. She's kind of worked alongside survivors to end this and go after the UC regents.
Yeah. So go back, and how did they, because was it Teresa and Lauren that were
Lauren. Yeah.
Okay.
Lauren Handy.
So how did they connect? Like, how did they know to go look for this waste truck? How did they, and tell our listeners, because the Surgi Center, from what I've done, is like the elite where all the politicians send their mistresses to have abortions. It's kind of like this, the hub.
This is the high dollar.
So set up
like a
the
spa.
clinic, set up Lauren and Teresa, and kind of how they got into that situation, and then how your hands got in all those photographs.
Sure. Yeah. So for those who don't know what we're talking about, a box of 115 aborted children were found in DC outside of a Washington Surgi Center by an abortionist who had murdered them by the name of Cesare Santangelo. 2 of my friends, one of them used to work for Survivors, the organization that I'm at. She was there for a number of years. Her name is Lauren Handy. She's a Catholic girl. And her and Teresa now kind of run POW, this group, and they moved to DC. They go out on almost a daily basis and do sidewalk counseling, offering, literally life-saving resources to these women who are at risk for abortion, and her children are at risk for abortion, and try to curtail the underlining reasons as to why they end up there. And so they were outside the clinic, and this just giving resources, counseling women, about to go inside. A truck pulls up from a company named Curtis Bay. And if you do this long enough, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
Mothers go in and babies eventually come out. And so it's been known for a long time that these boxes that are coming out of these facilities, they can't flush them down the toilet because that's a health safety code violation. They used to throw them away in the trash can, and through the history of the pro-life movement, pro-lifers have been going into the trash can and pulling these babies out and giving them dignified funerals and burials. But so this truck pulls up, unloads 3 boxes of aborted children. The driver of this box, or the driver of this truck, knows nothing about what's happening. He was just obviously doing a job. Exactly. They tell him, and by God's grace, he is just very visibly upset over this whole matter. And they convince him to let them have a box to give these babies a proper burial. And so they took this box back. Inside was 115 aborted children. 110 of them were first trimester babies, and 5 of them were late term, third trimester, almost full term children. One of them, Christopher X, was literally, this big. So they at that point, we called us. We were in New York at the time, outside of Margaret Sanger Planned Parenthood. We took a train, met them basically processed and photographed all these children, videographed them, made arrangements, strategized how to come forward, and delivered the children over to DC PD.
So I'm looking online. I'm sorry, y'all jump in, but I just
No, I'm just listening now.
I mean, I'm looking online at you call it POW.
Yeah.
Okay. POW. Okay. If you go to their website, paaunow.org, and you can click on Justice for the Five. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there are these tiny little blue like cups. It looks like what you'd get a side of your salad dressing in. And
they're Dutcher cups. Yeah.
Those are babies.
First trimester babies.
And there's a ton of them. And then you see a box and you see the back of the truck. And then you see a box with a hazardous waste bag. Are those your hands that are picking up the...
Depending on the photo, yes.
Yeah. I mean, then you can click on each of the 5 babies that they named and see photos of those babies. And I'll cry again, but it is so impactful. And I said the other day when we were talking about Roe v. Wade and we did a podcast on it, like, I can't even bring myself to watch the abortion videos. I have friends that have, and I feel like I'm watching these nasty TikToks and these people that are, did you see the TikTok where the lady's standing in front of a group and they're like, and ladies, if you get pregnant, you go have that bastard sucked out, and everybody in the crowd just cheers. I'm like, you don't know, you have image of God. I mean, it is so powerful. I don't know how you are not radically changed by that moment, which has led you to be so vocal, to stand in the crowd. I was looking at the Not the Bee article where they had the videos of you just being pummeled and everybody yelling at you and you just saying, God loves you. God loves, like there is redemption, there's grace. And I don't know how you've done it, but for whatever reason, you are here and it's ordained. And I want to look at Lauren and be like, that was such a God thing, or Teresa, for you to be there just when that truck shows up and just for a moment such as this.
And I've talked about this before. So when I held those babies, the first thing that I did was basically run in the other room and wept profusely. But the first thing that came down into my mind was I wrote down the words, "I will never be the same." And it's just true. When people ask me what it was like to hold those murdered children, and it was very strange because for the first time in my life, I was looking at this, innocent child who had never done anything to anybody. Probably the purest form of, he hasn't lived a life of sin yet at this point. Obviously we were born in sin, but it was just a tangible representation of evil, even though I was looking at a pure image of God, so that discrepancy, that contrast was just, it was weird. My brain couldn't handle all of it because it was just like at once dark, demonic pieces of an undefiled image of God was in my hands. So to say that changed me is an understatement. And I was very pro-life before and very anti-abortion before, but I can honestly say to all of you that abortion is the most vile and demonic, despicably evil thing that anyone could ever do or support or engage in. And I will do nothing, stop at nothing to end it. So, yeah.
And I think, first of all, we are grateful for what you are doing because so few people are doing it. When you see it, it does change you completely. And I'm wondering, among all of us, do you not believe, if you are able, I think seeing these precious children who have been murdered is the argument in itself, because how do you argue that you should be allowed to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
How can you look at that baby Christopher and say, yeah, that's okay?
Right.
Yep.
And I don't know how you can. And so do you recommend that if people are able to, my mother-in-law is very strong. We talked about this last night because she knew you were coming on. She was like, I really believe people should be made to see this. They
Yep.
need to see what they say they support. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah. So, abortion victim photography, we call it AVP. It is very controversial. But there has never been a civil injustice that has ended without AVP, from the Holocaust to the Civil Rights Act in the 60s to Emmett Till. Every single civil rights violation, if you turn on your TV and you go and you hear about the war in Ukraine, they are showing you victim after victim after victim. And for some reason, when we show the victims of abortion in all of their graphic detail, we don't want to show those. But if I'm convinced that abortion will not end unless the victims are seen, because it cuts through all of the euphemisms and lies that we have told ourselves to let this keep going. And when you look, it reminds you of what you know innately, being an image bearer of God. We know innately, Romans 1 says, through the creation of this world, the invisible attributes, everything has been clearly seen through the things that have been made, so that they are without excuse. And so we know it innately, but when we see it, it cuts through all the BS that the world is trying to sell behind all of this. We have to see the images. We have to show the images. We cannot be afraid of the images, because it's powerful and it changed lives. So dozens of people have come to us and said, I saw the images and the videos of you holding those murdered children, and I was pro-choice before, but not only am I pro-life now, but now I believe in supernatural evil, and I believe in hell, and I think people should go there. That's how powerful they are.
Ooh.
No,
Wow.
it really is fascinating. And I know you were aware of, and ladies are, we've seen images, pictures, I guess we start with drawings that show what happens during an abortion. And then somewhere along the lines, you see some photographic evidence. And then you, AJ, actually seeing the children had to be light years worse than even the photos. So it's like the more truth we see, the stronger it is. I had a friend years ago who had to work in a local hospital, and by whatever circumstance, he had to do some laboratory work on aborted little babies. He didn't know, he didn't sign up for that or whatever. It just so happened. And he told me years later that he still had nightmares from time to time from just having to take a tissue sample, because those little babies were right there. And the reality of what he said, he knew what it was, but to actually see it or be whole, right there was just more than he could take, frankly. And I don't know if he still has nightmares, but I do think you're right. A lot of people in our country don't understand the reality. It's like it's some weird, that's over there, I don't really know what it is kind of thing. And we have to wake people up, I think.
I think it's a self-preservation thing. Like, AJ, when you were talking about when you went in the room and your brain almost couldn't comprehend, like, the reality of what you're seeing, there's something in our heads, in our souls, that just wants to disconnect from that, because it is so evil and it is so overwhelming. And it's like, traumatic. You look at a lot of kids that have trauma in their lives, or even adults, they just, something shuts down.
Right.
And that's what happens for most Americans. It's like, it's so heinous and overwhelming. I just set it over here. But we have to start getting it in front of people. And I think the time is now, with the Roe v. Wade possible overturning. So what's
Yeah.
happened in your life since then? You said you had kind of a crazy week. I'm sure it's been crazy since then.
Yeah. So after this thing with like justice for these five babies, so we took these five babies and delivered them over to the medical examiner, well, DCPD. There's a lot of lies and stuff that were told about that. I mean, yeah, so that's besides the point. But we delivered these babies to DCPD, these five babies, because they had overwhelming, in my opinion, prima facie evidence of partial birth abortion and infanticide. So there's two federal laws that have gone through and been legislated upon to protect late-term abortions or late-term children in this country. The partial birth abortion ban by Rick Santorum, and then also the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. So the Born Alive Infant Protection Act makes it a felony to, not render medical aid to a child that has been survived an abortion, basically. So I could go through the evidence. I'll probably spare you guys because it's super gruesome, but there is definite evidence that at least one of the babies was a victim of partial birth abortion, and at least four of the other children were born alive. I'm sorry, three of the other four were born alive. So one of the babies was still in its amniotic sac, totally undisturbed, amniotic fluid inside of the sac, and just totally purple blue inside the sac. It's a rare abortion, a rare birth called an in-call abortion or in-call birth, whereas the baby is expelled so quickly through the process that it doesn't even the amniotic sac isn't even perforated. So the question is, how in the world do you perform a late-term abortion and without perforating an amniotic sac? Because normally you could just cut the cord or clamp the cord,
right?
But you would have to get around the entire child without perforating the amniotic sac with those surgical instruments. So most likely what happened is this baby was delivered in call in an amniotic sac, the clamp cut, the cord cut and clamped, and it just left to die on the table somewhere. So
I swear it's the NSA.
It could be.
I didn't even know there were some of these things. I didn't know that. I've always been fascinated with who does these procedures.
So, when my dad and my husband were in medical school, the people who were trained in abortion were looked upon as ones that, especially in my dad's day, was in the early 70s, you didn't even really want to talk about it because it wasn't considered a worthy field. And it's obviously, right?
Right.
But now we've grown to the point, so bold in our sin, that we have a whole wing, a whole center dedicated to training people who do abortions. I also know now that they're working towards allowing not just doctors, but nurse practitioners to be allowed to do this. And so I think it's something that no one wants to talk about. We will do anything to cover it up, we'll keep sinning in the darkness because who's going to see it, right? Mm-hmm. And bringing it to the light is shocking because it doesn't make any sense. We don't see it. Like, this is the first time in a long time we've seen pictures of human children that I know how he knows it was partial birth, and it's disgusting, and I won't say it. Right. But if you want to know, look it up. But this idea that we're bringing it out to the light is what has to happen for this to end. Because what I want to know, because we do know that the aborted babies are in their, their cells are used in vaccines. We know that they were used just for COVID, for example, in a few of the COVID applications. But do the women know? Are they signing a waiver that allows them to say that it is okay to perform experiments
I
on
would
their
argue
dead
that
children.
they probably don't even know what all they're signing.
Yeah, I don't think they
It's
do.
like when you get a mortgage.
Well,
because that's what
you know?
I'm like, how do you sign over? This is bad, but let's make it better. Let's help humanity.
this
Right.
is the worst part of what he was talking about, that this is business. And that's why they are fighting so hard against overturning Roe v. Wade, and because they are making money, profit off these babies. And that is so disturbing. So disturbing. And I wouldn't be surprised that they don't go out and literally prey upon vulnerable.
Well, they may pay.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Money
It's like buying a
by
vote.
being the person to come at the right time for the harvesting and
Right.
those sorts of things. And I don't even want to think about how much they might pay for.
Right.
And then
Honestly, it's
people
probably
making
not that
investments.
much.
I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know.
So what is, and the thing is that we're talking about California and we're talking about Washington, D.C. Planned Parenthood is right down the street from here.
Yes, it is.
Like, this is happening in Birmingham, Alabama, and we allow it, and our government pays for it.
Right. I mean, they do. And they built a beautiful new Planned Parenthood clinic, by the way.
Right.
It only opened less than a year ago. They may be suspended right now, but
Yeah.
we
Supposedly
know,
right now they're not actively performing
right.
there.
But horrific
Sorry
things
about
have
that,
happened.
guys.
But
It's
how do
okay.
you? But how do you even
We just
know
kept going.
with people who break the rules, bend the rules, willing to do this? You don't know what they're doing, what they're not doing. But they have made a huge investment right here in Birmingham, Alabama. And then you've got the other one, the clinic in Tuscaloosa, that,
Right.
that
And
is
in
definitely
Huntsville.
running. Yeah.
I mean,
So this is not just in those other states. These are things
no, it's
that
right
are
here.
happening right here. And then our legislators, AJ, I hate to jump in real quick, but our legislators,
Yeah.
the lady, what's her name, Collins, who sponsored arguably the best anti-abortion pro-life bill in the country, within 1 day, 2 days of
Backpedaling.
finding out that Roe v. Wade may be overturned, says we're going to have to go back in and
Make it a heartbeat bill.
some exemptions. Well, how do you even get there? Last week, last year, the year before 2019, it was Victory Lap. Look at us. We're great. Oh my gosh. And you know what? It's exactly what we talked about on the program. When I said there are some of them going, oh God, I didn't really know that this would ever possibly happen. I was just voting for it because I thought it would never.
And I thought it'd look
Never
really
matter.
good on my reelection campaign.
Yes.
And they are literally bartering with human lives. Is AJ, we were just talking about how, in our discussions, it's one thing to talk about Washington, D.C. or California, but literally right down the street from us is a Planned Parenthood here in Birmingham. And that this isn't a across the country issue. These things, there's a truck coming to Planned Parenthood in Birmingham that's going to do the exact same thing that happened in D.C. So,
Absolutely.
So I have
I don't know where you left off. I sorry about that.
it's okay. It's when you're trying to do good, evil doesn't want it out. So I'm so used to this.
So I have a question, and it's this. Do the women who have these little ones, they go in the clinic, they take the life of their unborn, do they know that Stericycle or the other group is going to pick their babies up and take them to a lab? Have they signed up for this when they agreed to have, an early or late term abortion?
Most of the time, no. They just sign a general form that gives them, permission to use their children. And it goes something like this, like, oh, do you want to donate the remains of this, the product of conception to medical research, so something good can come out of this, this horrible experience, or, so the amount of consent that they have, informed consent, has actually been something that's been legislated against, because these women do not know what's happening to them and the extent of their their loss and what's happening. So and in a late term abortion, right? So most of these contracts are happening in the second trimester, and so a labor induction has to happen then. And a lot of times women are given a sedative also, for the labor induction to happen. So they probably remember very little of what happens during the whole procedure and what they do with the child after anyway. So.
So I have a question for everybody. Because I've always thought that women have been lied to, especially younger women, that they really have no idea what abortion is. I mean, they've bought into the whole unviable or inviable, whichever one it is, unviable tissue mass kind of thing, not really a child, product of conception, like Jay was saying. And the reason I thought that was because they fought so hard, the industry fought so hard against things like women's right to know, or being able to show, here's a sonar of what is inside you, and they just went crazy about it. So I've always been convinced that a lot of women really don't know that the public relations, the propaganda has been so strong for so long that there's just a total disconnect from reality.
Yeah, some women don't. I think, it's hard for me to fully wrap my head around that argument, because by sheer fact that you're going into an abortion clinic, you're pregnant,
Right.
So this idea that women just think there's just this clump of cells, obviously there are women, right? There are women, and I don't want to take it away from that. There are young girls who are dragged there against their will by their parents, who are told that what's inside of them is nothing yet. I mean, so there are obviously victims, and I think that the parents in that regard, or the boyfriend, if they're under psychological or emotional or physical duress, pimps take their prostitutes in sex slavery, and to have their child ripped out of them. And so those people are generally victims. But honestly, if you spend any time in front of an abortion clinic, very quickly that women know exactly what's happening, and it's deplorable and just unbelievable, the stuff that I'm told. Many women know exactly what they're doing, and they are unashamed about it.
It's almost become a badge of pride or honor. It's very disturbing. If you hear some of these, like in front of the Supreme Court, if you watch the videos, and I saw you had the chest camera on, I saw it from several different angles, just their lack of, I don't want to say shame, but I don't know, of any feeling, almost remorse or awareness or compassion. There's nothing. I mean, it's the most bizarre, and they really think they are on the right side. It's weird. Like, to me, it's almost like the scales, like there's some sort
like
of
a spiritual aspect.
Just there's a very spiritual aspect to what we're talking about. And I feel it more and more as kind of,
and we have to be very careful too, because sorry to interrupt. But especially as Christians, right? So the level of culpability obviously varies based on the woman's knowledge, and the abortion industry has lied to women and telling them that this is a clump of cells and all that. Obviously, with the medical advancement and technological advancement with 3D ultrasound, 5D ultrasounds now, women know what's in the womb, but we have to really, especially when it comes to legislation, we have to understand that if we are saying with biology that what's in the womb is a human being, a full and whole human being from conception, and we believe that, then we need to start acting like that and start treating abortion and unborn humans as equally valuable. If we say that we believe they're equally valuable, we need to start treating them as equally valuable. And I hear a lot of rhetoric of trying to victimize women and not push for penalties for abortions. I understand that a cultural shift needs to happen, whereas, and as believers, we know that part of the job of law is to be a tutor, right? So the law is a tutor, to lead us to Christ. So the law informs the conscience. The law was not written for a righteous person, but for, an immoral, for those who, disobey their parents, and for slanderers. And, so the job of the law, God's law, is to inform the conscience of society. So we should work to produce the type of just laws that is consistent with what we say is in the womb. So in other words, if we say what's in the womb is just as much a human as you and I, we should be consistent in saying that there should be no difference in how we treat somebody who murders an unborn human than somebody who murders a born human. I would hope to think that we could at least be that consistent. If we say we're pro-life, that if we say that what's in the womb is equally valuable, then we should treat it as if it was so.
Wow.
Yeah, he's
That's
right
my
about
thing.
that.
I've never thought about that.
Because we run and hide when someone says, "You want to punish the mom?" And I'm like, "Mom, what are you talking about? Mom of who? Mom of what? Right. You want to punish the woman? You want to punish the woman?" And they do that. They did it to us when we were in the legislature. If anybody even thought about there being a penalty for the person who had the abortion, not just the person who performed the abortion, they just melted down. And most of the legislature, I'd never really thought about the argument that way, but that's the philosophically true argument that you're laying out there, AJ.
Okay, but say
for
that.
Sure. And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and we touched on this last week, and I can't remember. I think you were being chased down and had to go. At some point, we talked about, if we're going to be pro-life, which means anti-abortion, it also means being pro-caring for these women and these, I want to say children, because there are young girls that come in, for them mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. Like, we as believers in the church have to step in long before even the baby is born. If we're going to care, we have to care. And so there's a whole other component to it that I don't know if the legislature or even our side, the conservative side, have thought about. Like, this is a huge undertaking.
Yes.
But there are people standing ready. I mean, they have been ready, and they've been doing those things for the people the ladies that they've talked out of it. So I think but if you think infrastructure is there.
Sure.
But how many babies are aborted every year? Okay. If those abortions, you hope you can go back and you can get better birth control and better preventative. But if you can't, we have millions of babies that we now have to care for.
Right.
We do. And so we have, and I sent an article, and I'll make sure and include this in the show notes, but there are several, actually, and AJ, I know you will know the numbers better than I do. I used to know them off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. We have probably 2,400, there's crisis pregnancy centers, there are adoption agencies, there are pro-life volunteers, there are groups that stand by, and they're by the hundreds, sometimes thousands, but we outnumber the amount of abortion clinics to what we say we do. So there are out there, we are living it out. Go ahead, AJ, I'm sorry.
Sure. So there's a safe haven law in every single state where a mother can drop off a child at either a police or fire station with no questions asked, no paperwork signed, and give that child up. Right now, as we speak, there are 32 adopted parents ready for every single person in foster care. So when you hear that this idea that the foster care system is overrun and there's not enough people, and it's first of all, it's not true. And second of all, when you hear of people that can't, it's because a lot of times they're giving time for the parents of these children that are involved in drugs or anything to clean their lives up before just delivering them over. So there is an overwhelming amount of resources available, adoptive families. The pro-life industry is just unbelievable. I mean, every single case that I've come across where a woman needs help, I mean, we have not only helped her, but showered her with tens of thousands of dollars, not only goods, but helping them out with rent, helping that the pro-life industry, the pro-life, it is overwhelmingly ready. And we've been doing this for 50 years, and the rhetoric from the other side that we don't care about life and that we only care about it was born is just such an incredible lie from the pit of hell. And we have just a network of thousands and thousands of pro-life holistic holistic organizations that not only help the woman but help the families. So, you know, and I like to joke around and say, you know, next time, you know, you are hear this rhetoric that pro-life people only care about when you're born, go to Planned Parenthood and ask them for diapers, formula, a crib, rent assistance, and money, and they will laugh at you. But if you go into any pro-life pregnancy clinic or any pro-life crisis center, that is exactly what you will find. So it's just full of lies and rhetoric, just you know, because they have one solution. It always involves violence. So, and it's just the pro-life industry and the pro-life organizations and the movement does not accept that as an answer. We care about the mother and the child. We care about families. We care about reconciliation and restoring, bringing the gospel to bear also, and restoring the mother and the father and the children. You know, that's the whole thing with isn't that the promise, is that he will restore the hearts of the fathers with their children and turn the hearts of the children back to their fathers. And that's exactly what we've been done. But to your point, the church does need to rise up, because if we are going to end the slaughter of these children, we need to come forth and be that support care system and give sacrificially too.
And I think on the other side of that as well, as an adopted child, there's 3 of us in our family. We're all adopted. You guys adopted. The other thing we can do on the other side of it is also to make it easier to adopt. Because my parents would have loved to adopt more children. It's unheard of that in the 70s, there's 3 of us, 70s and one from 82. That's unheard of. It is it's normal now. But that's the other side of it that we also have to work on. It's a both and approach, but you're right. It's got to be the church, because there are many people who are working in the industry that they're taking the Bible's admonition of not telling the left hand what the right hand is doing and not showing their good works like the Pharisees, because they're like, I'm out there doing it. I'm not going to really tell you about it. But the church does need to do a better job of saying, these are all of and I'll get it in the show notes so everybody can see it. And I'm sorry that I don't have my iPad pulled up to show you all of the ways that we are helping, but from a legislative perspective, we can make it less arduous to adopt children and to get children from foster care. There's a lot of work that we can do, but there's a lot of work that's being done right now. That's the good news. And I'm glad you said that, because it's really common for people to say, well, you don't care. Well, we do.
Right.
We really do.
And
people accept it.
People are going to have a hard time with the idea that we make abortion a crime. But you also have to realize that we are not just like any other crime. Like, so first of all, it's already wholly inconsistent, because if I murder a pregnant woman, I'm already charged with a double homicide. Yet we don't want to charge a woman who maliciously and intentionally takes the life of her child, even after the law has informed the conscience that what's in the womb is protected and it is a life. So, but we have to understand that just like any other crime, that there's a trial, right? And during a trial, you determine what is the level of culpability. Was this woman a victim? Was she coerced by her husband? Was she under slavery? Was she, I mean, the sex slavery in America is unbelievable, right? So, but that's what a trial is about, is to get to the bottom of and to bring justice. And there's different levels of like, so not everything is a first degree murder charge, right? So we have manslaughter charges. But it's unbelievable that I can kill somebody with, unintentionally with my vehicle and get a manslaughtering charge. But in a lot of these states, you're really going to tell me that, like, for instance, we just saw in Louisiana, it's an equal protection bill that my friend Jeff Durbin in Apologia just put forth. Under the current other pro-life law that they're trying to vote on, it only made it $1,000 crime to kill an unborn child. Do you know what the crime to kill a dog in that state was? $25,000.
Yeah.
Are we kidding ourselves?
Wow.
If we honestly think that we care so little about children in the womb and call ourselves pro-life, that we devalue the child and the blood of the child to where we think that it should only be a crime of the tune of $1,000 to take an innocent unborn child's life. It's unbelievably inconsistent.
So a dog is 25 times more valuable than a child. Got it.
Yeah. If we care about the lives of unborn children and we really think that they are equally human and equally valuable, we have to be honest and we have to be consistent with that. So
I agree. Don't most of the states have laws that say if you do something that hurts your child, that you can be prosecuted, like if you're taking drugs or whatever?
Yes.
And then at the same time,
absolutely,
to get out of that, you could go and have an abortion, and then you're not guilty anymore.
It all goes back to the definition of a person. What is a person?
Right, and
when,
whether you're
does
wanted
life
or
begin? Not. And that's, I was listening to a podcast a few days ago, and AJ, we're at an hour and 8 minutes. That's just insane. Right. It's flown by. Thank you so much for being with us. But
sure.
This podcast was talking about how they'll say, okay, well, at 15 weeks, it's not viable because it's a potential life at that point. And the argument was, okay, well, a toddler is a potential adult. Like at what point do you cut that off?
Well, you used to think that would win, but now they're saying, well, okay, you're right.
Yeah. I mean,
it's not an adult yet. It's not a person
yet. This viability standard is just asinine. So, just so everybody knows, Roe v. Wade was a decision in 1973 that protected abortion for all 9 months of pregnancy. Planned Parenthood versus Casey came in I believe 1992 and established this viability standard that you can't take the life of a child if it's not viable, which is unbelievably inconsistent because you're basically saying my value as a human being is dependent upon whether science has progressed to determine whether I can live or not, right? So the viability standard in 1973 was so now they're considering it about 24 weeks, right? But now they're not even consistent with that because we can now 21 weeks, we've saved children at 21 weeks gestation. Mm-hmm. So so this understanding that you're valuable if you're viable is unbelievably inconsistent and just intellectually bankrupt, right? So this, my friend Seth Gruber, it puts it very well. The issue and the spell that we're under is we've confused human value with human function, right? So we're saying that humanity is not what is contingent upon your value. It's something else. It's your human function. So we've chosen these arbitrary categories to determine human value because you can't deny that humanity is present, but we've determined human value on something other than this thing that is philosophically derived as personhood, right? So that we did this back in the 1850s where Black people were human beings, but they weren't human persons because of the level of melanin in your skin. So this accidental property that we attribute personhood to, something that is arbitrary and something that the state just derives. So because you are of your size or because of your level of development, because of your environment, because of your degree of dependency,
right,
we are choosing these arbitrary categories that people may or may not possess, instead of something that we all universally share, which is a human nature, a humanity.
Right.
And so we've been doing this forever. The Nazis, it was IQ and skin color. Now it's location and level of development.
Yeah.
So it's wholly inconsistent, and it's just, we claim to be people that are going off the science, but we totally ignore every scientific book, every embryology test book, just the clear science that human process, human development begins at fertilization.
No, you're right.
We can't confuse human value with human function.
You got it. AJ, thank you for your time, brother. I appreciate you being on Alabama Unfiltered. Ladies, any last words?
I actually have some last words. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised.
No, I just, we adopted, for people in Birmingham or Alabama, our 2 children were adopted through Lifeline Adoption Children's Services. And they have my husband actually is on the national board. They have a great adoption program. They have Lifeline Village, which cares for the mothers while they're pregnant, cares for the children. Like, there is hope if you are out there and you are struggling with this decision of abortion or to keep your baby. It's lifelinechild.org. I don't know, email me. I'll put my email in the show notes. I don't care. Like, there's hope. There is not shame. There is grace. And there are people right here in Alabama that will help you in this time. And kind of, AJ, what you're saying, I mean, the pro-life side is ready to help, contrary to what the world is saying. And I know, Amy Beth, you're super involved with a lot of this as well.
And I just want to echo that my birth mom was 17 and hid my pregnancy through her senior year of high school and got very little care. And I'm just want to speak to the birth moms out there that you've just found out you're pregnant and you feel like this is the end of the world and you think that you do not have any hope and that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. That's a lie. There's a child that grows within you. There's life ahead. There's a good life ahead. But perhaps your circumstances will allow you to cry out and ask the Lord for help, because we've all had to do that. And we are here to help you. There are thousands upon thousands of people who want to help you in what feels like a very dark time in your life. And so for those of you considering, like Allison said, aborting your baby, we're here to help you, and we will walk with you through that. Right here in Alabama. I mean, it's just unbelievable, but all over the place. And if you want to find us on Facebook, like, I'll adopt your baby. Like, if that's what you want, if you want a friend, like, just reach out to us on Facebook, but just.
Okay. We're both ending the show in tears. Way to go, AJ. But such a good and necessary discussion. And, wait, I can tell Scott has a heart too. It's so sweet.
I have allergies.
This was such a blessing, and thank you so much for being here. And I know God will use this in an amazing way. And prayers for you and protection for you and your family as you stand in the gap for all these kids. And I got to throw it back to Scott, or I'm going to start crying again.
Thanks, AJ. Thanks, ladies. I appreciate y'all being on. All of our viewers out there. Guys. One of the things that you definitely check out the show notes when you're giving us the 5 stars and stuff, because even if you're not from Alabama where we are, we can find somebody that will help you out.
Yes.
There's a pro-life group somewhere where you are, so get in touch with us if you need to. Thank you for watching the program. We appreciate you telling other people about it. Like I said, give us a 5 stars. You can find us at all the places. You probably won't find this show at YouTube in a couple weeks or a few days.
We are going to get kicked off.
But you'll find it at most of the places. Thanks for watching. See y'all.